Hey everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here today to discuss NC State women's basketball's loss to number 17 TCU. I'm expecting the Wolfpack to fall a little bit in the polls. We'll cover that later, but this was a concerning loss. Had some eye-opening things that went down. Obviously, a ranked opponent, but in your own building at the Reynolds Coliseum. Snapped a 24 game win streak in that building for NC State. So, not a great development there. But um, after the game, it's pretty evident that this team has some problems. Not, I don't want to say locker room problems, but just problems with energy. Um, Tilda Trieger brought it up, Destiny Lunan brought it up after the game, and then Wes Moore really brought it up and said, this team is lacking sort of those energy players that can make such a big difference in basketball, especially college basketball. You need those players that can bring the energy, that can elevate the vibes and the gusto of the rest of the team. And NC State really doesn't have that right now. They sort of have they have laid back players that kind of just want to go in, do their thing. Zoe Brooks is sort of that quiet leader. Camille Pierre is sort of not a I wouldn't categorize her as a leader at this point just because she's still learning the program. She's still kind of figuring out what her role is going to be. And nobody's really been able to take control of this team in those moments where they hit adversity. They just sort of start playing one-on-one and try to figure it out. And that's another issue that NC State's really going to need to work on moving forward, which I'll get into a little bit more in a sec. But yeah, I mean, this energy issue is problematic. They brought in some players off the bench and Lorena Wu and Maddie Cox who, were nice sparks, but those players aren't going to be consistent members of the rotation. Maddie Cox might be, but Awu definitely won't be. But I think if they found anybody in Sunday's loss, it's the freshman guard Destiny Lunan. She's really, really fast. Really impressed by her play in this game. And I think she could be a really valuable piece coming off the bench here. All of this to say, I don't want to discredit TCU at all. That I think that's a really, really good basketball team with some really talented players. Obviously, Olivia Miles was very familiar with NC State and what they wanted to do, and I think that went a long way. They're really, really big. They have multiple players that are like 6'5" or taller, and that was problematic for NC State. They did not have a lot of answers for those interior options, and that's kind of what ended up being the death knell for this NC State team. And they made shots from outside with more consistency than NC State did. This is another thing that NC State really needs to work on is the shot making. This is a team that wants to get downhill, but doesn't have that option to spray it out for 3-point shooting, or at least hasn't figured out who that is. I still think Caden Samuels can be that person. They just haven't been able to find her with consistency, and she's not scoring at a very high rate. But I do think if they kind of set her up in the corner and let her work, I think she can be that spot up shooter that this team needs, but they got to find a way to get her more involved. And then you got, Tilda Trieger starting to find her stroke from beyond the arc. She hit 3 threes yesterday. That could be really important moving forward if they can get her more involved as sort of a pick and pop option rather than just a low post operator, because she is really traditionally a four. And I think that's what she wants to be doing. I think because of the roster makeup, she's required to play a little bit more of the five. But I do think that she's able to step out and play on the perimeter a little bit. And she certainly showed that against some taller opponents, which I think helped her sort of regain that confidence because she realized, oh, I have to be the person here. I have to be the star. And she certainly proved that she could be that. They just nobody else stepped up alongside her. Back to the scoring. the one-on-one basketball is something that NC State's really going to need to work on. I don't know if it's a lack of chemistry or if it's a just learning to play with one another. But this team has three players that really like to look for their own offense, and that's Camille Pierre, Zoe Brooks, and Zam Jones. Those three want to get what they want, and that's fine. But when they're all three of those players aren't going like they weren't yesterday. I mean, Brooks finished with 6 points. Pierre scored eight, six of which came in the fourth quarter. So she was really not efficient, shooting 4 of 15. Brooks only scored six, and I think all those came in the first half. Let me double check that for you. Yeah. So she didn't score in the third and fourth quarter. And Jones didn't score, period. She was 0 of 9 from the field. So a really, really rough afternoon for those players. And NC State's going to have to find a way to get them to kind of coexist a little bit better. And I think feeding the hot hand is doable, but I think you also have to be able to go down the court and run a play and have an offensive system where there's some cohesion, and NC State hasn't proven that they can do that yet. So I think, Wes Moore talked about that. They've really got to stop playing one-on-one basketball because at the end of the day, the team is going to be what wins this group games. They're not talented enough to win games individually. Zoe Brooks is a really, really great basketball player, but she's not there yet. And Wes Moore said yesterday, Isaiah James and Sanaya Rivers are not walking through that door. And those two players really, really insulated Zoe Brooks well to the point where, she's never had this role. And this is my next point. She needs to accelerate this process into becoming a leader a little bit faster, because this team's going to run into some trouble if she has games like that when they get to conference play. And I think these next few weeks are so important. They got a couple tournaments. They got, some easier matchups coming up here where they'll be able to, really figure some things out. And that's going to be a really, really important stretch of the season that normally wouldn't be because, this team does have so much to learn and does have so much to improve on. So those are my areas that NC State really needs to improve moving forward. Again, we'll have coverage of the AP poll later, and we'll break that down for you. But as always, if you want more content, go ahead and throw me a follow on X at Senate Tucker. Go ahead and throw the website's X account a follow at Wolfpack on SI. And of course, daily episodes of the NC State Insider podcast can be found on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in.